We'll start with the BBC in the second row here, please.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Jonathan Beal from BBC. I just want to take you back to Donald Trump's comments at the weekend. You've already issued a statement saying that they undermined all NATO security and put soldiers at risk. Can you just explain what you meant by that? And would you go as far as President Biden, who said Donald Trump's remarks were dumb and dangerous? And separately on the spending, you've highlighted increases in NATO spending today with an expectation that 18 countries will meet the 2% target. What would you say has been the main motivator of that? Is it threats from Donald Trump or is it threats from Vladimir Putin? Thank you.
NATO has been able to prevent a military attack against any NATO ally for 75 years. And we have done that because it has been absolutely clearly communicated from all NATO allies at any time that we are there to protect all allies. The whole idea of NATO is that an attack on one ally will trigger the response from the whole alliance. And as long as we stand behind that message together, we prevent any military attack on any ally. So the purpose of NATO is to prevent war, is to preserve peace, is to prevent an attack on NATO allies. And we have done so successfully for decades because our deterrence is credible. So any suggestion that we are not standing up for each other, that we are not going to protect each other, that does undermine the security of all of us, increasing the risks. And therefore it is so important that we, both in actions but also in words, communicate clearly that we stand by NATO's commitment to protect and defend all allies. The good news is that that's exactly what NATO allies are doing. NATO has the capabilities, we have the resolve to protect and defend all allies. And that's also the reason why we don't see any imminent threat against any NATO ally, because we have, since 2014, significantly enforced our collective defense. We have the strongest reinforcement of our collective defense in decades, and that was of course triggered by President Putin's illegal annexation of Crimea. But it was a decision by NATO allies back in 2014 that since the world has changed, since the world became more dangerous, it was necessary for NATO to respond, and that's exactly what we have done. With more defense spending, record high defense investments across the alliance, with more forces deployed in the eastern part of the alliance, with higher readiness of our forces, with heavy investments in new modern capabilities, all of that together has strengthened NATO. And as long as we continue to invest, as long as we continue to adapt NATO, we will continue to ensure that no NATO ally is attacked.
Sorry, you didn't mention Donald Trump. So what is your message to Donald Trump specifically?
So my message is exactly what I said, that we should not undermine the credibility of NATO's deterrence. And that's both about the capabilities we are investing in, but also how we communicate. Because the deterrence is in the mind of our adversaries. And we should leave no room for miscalculation or misunderstanding in Moscow about our readiness and our commitment, our resolve to protect all allies. And the reason to do so is not to provoke a conflict, but is to prevent the conflict, as NATO has done successfully for 75 years.
We'll go to ZDF up here on my right, please.
Thank you. Florian Neuhan, ZDF German TV. Again, one follow-up question on the Trump statements, Mr. Stoltenberg. There is now a discussion going on in Europe whether it needs an own nuclear deterrence. What is your position on that? Does European Union as a whole, or maybe some European member states, should think and develop an own nuclear deterrence in order to be better prepared for a future with maybe Donald Trump in the White House? And the second question, you mentioned the ammunition factory which was inaugurated by Chancellor Scholz. It's going to take months until there's really a production starting, but there's a lack imminently now in Ukraine. What can and what should NATO countries do in order to help Ukraine now with ammunition? Thank you.
We have a NATO nuclear deterrent, and that has provided the ultimate security guarantees for NATO allies for decades. And this is the arrangements we have together in NATO, with agreed procedures for command and control, doctrines. We are exercising together. And of course, this is the combination of US nuclear weapons in Europe, but also all the NATO allies providing the planes, the infrastructure, the support to be able to ensure that this nuclear deterrent is functional, operational, safe and secure and reliable. So this is a nuclear deterrent that works, and we should continue to ensure that it remains safe and reliable. Part of this is also, of course, that we have two other allies with nuclear weapons, the United Kingdom and France, and I think the issue is that this is the way we organize our nuclear deterrent in NATO, and we should do nothing to undermine the credibility of that either. Then on ammunitions, we need, of course, to do both, to do two things at the same time. We need to be able to deliver ammunition in the short term, meaning that we need to continue to dig into our own stocks. We need to see if there is possible to buy ammunition from outside NATO countries, and allies have done that. And we need to also be able to ramp up production from existing factories. More shifts has been a way to actually increase production from existing production capacity, but in the longer term we need to increase also the production capacity. And therefore I welcome decisions not only by Germany but also from other allies to invest more to ramp up production. And that's the way we will ensure that we're able to both continue to support Ukraine with a steady flow of ammunition, but also to replenish our own stocks, which have now been depleted, to enable us to support Ukraine.
Go to Radio Free Europe on the fourth row over here, please.
Denis Dermenji, Radio Free Europe, Moldovan Bureau. In previous years at the Madrid and Vilnius summit, the allies pledged to support Moldova, and lately we've been hearing more and more claims that Moldova is putting as next target. And this week Shahed drone was found shot down on its territory. Could you please explain what kind of assistance from allies the so-called next Putin's target can receive, and what NATO can offer to Moldova through the new ITPP, which will be launched next year? Thank you.
Well, as the discovery of drone fragments in Moldova just demonstrates that the war in Ukraine is dangerous. And this is a direct result of the war aggression that President Putin launched against the neighbor of Moldova, against Ukraine, and demonstrates the reckless behavior of Russia attacking another country, also with consequences for neighbors like Moldova. We are working closely with Moldova. We are closely monitoring the situation. Moldova is a partner. We are working with them on reforms, on capacity building. But of course, we also respect the neutrality of Moldova. Moldova is not seeking NATO membership, but we welcome very much to further strengthen the partnership with Moldova.
We'll go to Interfax here, please. Third row.
Yeah. Thank you, Dylan. News agency Interfax, Ukraine, Irina Sommer. Coming back to defense industry, recently President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said that Ukrainian defense industry will be integrated with the EU. Is it such a possibility in the frame of NATO to do so? Thank you.
So we are working closely with the Ukrainian defense industry, and we welcome efforts by all NATO, all allies, but also by the European Union to see how we can further strengthen the Ukrainian defense industry. I think the Ukrainians have demonstrated ingenuity and skills when it comes to producing more weapons, developing new weapons, and not least combining different types of technologies when it comes to unmanned vehicles, drones, but also maritime drones, to enable them to actually inflict heavy losses on Russian forces, also far behind the lines, including ships in the Black Sea. So both when it comes to ramping up production of 155 ammunition, but also more advanced weapons, we are working with Ukrainians. I welcome the efforts by NATO allies, defense industry working with Ukrainians. And we are, as part of the NATO comprehensive package, also working on interoperability and standardization, which is part of integrating Ukraine more and more into NATO, or moving Ukraine closer to NATO.
Go to Deutsche Welle, please, in the third row.
Thank you so much, Alexandra von Namm, Deutsche Welle, DW. The Ukrainian armed forces said today that they destroyed a large Russian ship. I guess you cannot comment on that, but could you tell us how significant the Black Sea campaign of the Ukrainians is, especially when we consider that there are intelligence services, for instance, the Norwegian one, saying that the Russians now have the upper hand on the battlefield? Thank you.
The Ukrainians have been able to inflict heavy losses on the Russian Black Sea fleet. They have actually been able to push the Black Sea fleet away from the western part of the Black Sea. And this is a great achievement, a great victory for the Ukrainians. The fact that they've been able to push away the Russian Black Sea fleet and open a corridor, so they now are able to export grain and other commodities to the world market. Few believed this was possible just a few months ago, but now actually the export of grain from Ukraine takes place even without an agreement with Russia. So this shows the skills and the competence of the Ukrainian armed forces. This is first and foremost a result of what they do, their ingenuity, their skills, their bravery of the Ukrainian armed forces, but of course help and support from NATO allies is also important. I think it also demonstrates that, of course, what goes on along the front line is important, and we are all disappointed that the offensive that was launched by the Ukrainian forces last year didn't achieve more progress, advances. At the same time, we should not forget that even though the front line has not changed, the Ukrainians have been able to actually attack behind the Russian lines, both on land, destroying command and control, arms depots, and important also Russian capabilities, including aircraft, but also continue to destroy parts of the Russian Black Sea fleet, and this just shows the skills of the Ukrainian armed forces.
We have Kiev Independent in the second row, please. Just 1 second with the microphone. Thanks.
So we hear that there may be changes to the format of Ramstein, with NATO taking over military aid coordination for Ukraine. Can you tell us why and what this will look like?
So first of all, I think that the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, or the Ramstein format, has been a great success. And it has mobilized support from NATO allies and partners. When it comes to military support, we have to remember that 99% of the military support to Ukraine comes from NATO allies, including Sweden, who will soon become a full member. We are constantly discussing how we can ensure that our support is sustained, how we can organize the support in the best possible way. We will have a meeting in the NATO-Ukraine contact group today, a virtual meeting. Defense ministers will meet tomorrow, NATO defense ministers. It's not possible for me to go into more details about those discussions. These are ongoing deliberations, but the aim is, of course, to ensure that we continue to provide support to Ukraine in the best possible way and in the most robust way as possible.